recording. So this is going to be reviewing of these Quizizz problems. It is a good amount of them, right? Any yellow question I will review. The green questions I'll skip over, so post to Piazza if you need more help. Okay, and I'm moving right along because there's a bunch of stuff to cover. Okay, so in front of us, this is giving you hints on how you should be working through the asteroids part 1, the spaceship, okay? So in this code, we have some question marks, and we're asking what should be inside key pressed, okay? So let's see, WASD. Okay, so part of this is somewhat unfair in that we'd have to be familiar with WASD being the directional arrows, right? W is up, S is down, A is left, and D is right. So it's asking us, right, if we're interested in the A key, that should be turning the spaceship left, okay, left. What's confusing here is you have, remember, the degrees, right, works in clockwise manner because that's how our axes are defined. And so going downwards, right, going clockwise is a positive term, right? But you notice clockwise corresponds with going towards your right. Does that make sense? So then going left, okay, is then the opposites, right? Left is therefore counterclockwise. And so as we look at these functions, okay, set point direction, not so much. That just hard codes it to be negative 10 degrees, okay? My point direction here, the third option, violates the rules of encapsulation, right? We're accessing a protected member variable, and this will be outside the class, okay? Notice here, this is in the asteroid game file, okay? It's where setup and draw are. And then set direction, no, right? The two directions, remember, pointing is different than where you're going, so that leaves bob.turn negative 10 degrees, okay? That matches a left-hand turn. But without that knowledge of WASD on how those work, you would have gotten this one wrong. Okay, scrolling down to the next one. And if I come across a question and you want me to review it, just say something, block 2. Okay, polymorphism, okay? And we have this big program related to the base class and the derived class. So this really big word, polymorphism, means same name, different meaning, okay? So which one of these functions is shared amongst these two things, right? Depending on the object, right, that it's at, it will do different behaviors. Well, one key idea here is looking down here, yeah? So get big num, you see how there's two versions of it, okay? So that's the same name, and then you notice the inside stuff, it does two different things. You see that? Yeah? If you are using the get big num from the derived class, that means you're doing this thing, okay? If you are a base class type and you get big num, then you do this one, okay? You square my num. So get big num, this function, is one that is is an example of polymorphism. To review even more vocabulary, you must override something in order to have polymorphism, okay? You remember overriding? Yes, replacing, overwriting, as it's known as. So get small num, that thing is unique to base class. Derived class inherits get small num, okay? Increment, that is also an inherited function for derived class. And getNum, okay, that is your accessor, your getter, that is also inherited from base class. But they have the same name, and those functions have the same meaning, right? Whether or not you're a derived class or a base class. Okay. It's a lot of words. Okay, so for this one, lots of words reading through. Looks like we did okay on this one. The theme of object-oriented questions are they're incredibly wordy. Okay, I hope you've noticed that pattern. But once you understand what the question's asking, it's not so bad. But I say that about a lot of things. Okay, so in this one, we have this class called a party, which keeps track of number of people at the party. Which of the following method signatures, okay, that's a little bit new vocabulary, Method signature is what I've been calling function header, okay? Right here, missing header of set method, okay? That comment is rather descriptive. Could replace the missing header for the set method in the code above, so below, so that the method will work as intended. So you've seen this before, like in your quiz, okay? If I am setting num of people, this member variable equal to people, okay, it definitely should be public, like all the options have that. I'm not returning anything, so I can eliminate 4 of my answer choices on that fact alone, okay? Notice there's no return statement in my function body. So by default, it's this 4th option here, void setNum int people, okay, right here. If you approached it from an argument perspective, notice that people would have been, needs to be declared, okay? So that means you can eliminate the second option. So it has to be one of these 4. And then this one is definitely the wrong name, right? There's no P being used. So it's one of these 3. You think about the difference. It is a set, right? They told you that. It's a setter, okay? And so that's why the 4th one here is the correct answer. Setters are also known as mutators, okay? You're changing the value. You're editing. That's number 10. Here's number 11. 50% accuracy. So check array. This one's a little bit harder. The AP exam likes asking these questions, okay? And slowly I'm kind of probing this out of your brains, okay? In the sense that when I sit and ask you about things, you are describing, you're not just reading line by line what the code is doing. Instead, you're interpreting it and saying what your code does. And that's essentially what happens here, okay? Check array. And we're looking for the description of what this code is doing. So notice we have this lock, right? Short for location. It starts roughly in the middle, array length over 2. So I'm only checking the first half of the array based on this k variable, right? A comparison happens. We say that the middle, right, whatever is there, if you encounter something bigger, notice we store that index, right, that location of the biggest thing inside my array. But notice the entire array, we don't visit it. We only visit the first half. So as k marches upwards to, actually, hold on, never mind, sorry. We do visit the entire thing. This one's array.length, I misspoke, okay? We do visit everything there, but we arbitrarily start at the middle, saying, oh, is this my biggest, right? Just a point of comparison. If whatever I'm encountering is bigger, then I store it. And notice I visit all elements to find the biggest one, store it in location. And notice here, I return lock, right? The location of the biggest one. I don't return the elements, right? The value of the largest one here. So knowing that, I can eliminate this 4th option, okay? So I know an index is returned. It's one of these 4, okay? Returns the index of the largest value. I think I like that one, all right? Returns the index of the first element in the array who's greater than this one. No, everything has to be visited, but if this was like return lock, then this one would have worked. Last element in the array whose value is greater than lock. First and last. All right, so I'm going to think about this a little bit more. I know it's not this one. Returns the index of the largest value in the second half of the array. No. Okay, I forgot the answer here. Which one will it be? Yeah. Yes, this one down here, the very last one. Yeah. The first and last language is what's confusing me here, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. I'm like, hold on, I'm having second thoughts. So this one is the correct answer. I'm trying to understand why they would mention this part.
The wording.
Yeah, the wording here is a little bit confusing. And I believe, my question? This one?
Yeah.
Index. Index of the largest value, and so not this one, not the second half. We don't care about the second half. So this one was arbitrary, start in the middle. I think for this one, what the answer choice here is if the return statement moved like inside, right? If you started at the end, right? If k was equal to array.length and you ended at 0 and you and decremented, then it could have been that one versus this one. All right, so it is the first option. Confused myself. This is a tough question. All right, number 12. Oh gosh, yes. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit, okay, and understand what is being asked of us. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so main goal is, after I read and understand this paragraph, I just have to pick a for loop header, okay? So that's the good part. Now we have to understand what is being asked of us here. If any two numbers in an array of integers, not necessarily consecutive numbers in the array, are out of order, oh gosh, i.e. the number that occurs first in the array is larger than the number that occurs second, then that's called an inversion. For example, in an array X that has values 1, 4, 3, 2, there are 3 inversions, since 4 is greater than both 3 and 4 is greater than both 3 and 2. So here and here. And 3 is greater than 2, okay? Which of the following can be used to replace the missing code so that it correctly identifies the number of inversions? Doesn't that sound familiar? Does this ring bells of has ditch? No? No, or this block didn't have that question, okay, or darn it. Yes. Okay, so we're doing this kind of comparison. Notice that as you're doing comparisons here, one main idea from arrays 4, which I hope you realized, but now I'll put it into words, is notice when you, here, right, if you are ever looking one ahead in terms of like comparing elements, right, there's always pairs you're comparing. I compare myself with one person in front of me. You have to be careful there to avoid out of bounds errors, in the sense that, if you access, if you're at the very end of your array, there isn't an additional 1. So notice in this code, it stops 1 before, okay? This is a nested loop in a sense. So the bad part about just everything being on the computer is I would write down a short example, right? Why do I need 2 loops in this problem, okay? And that makes inversions kind of hard. So I'll demonstrate somewhat with my hands here, right? You have one element of interest, right, up here, and then you compare it against everything else in your array, okay? That's one loop, like that. When you're done with that comparison, you move on to the next guy, and then do the later comparisons with what's left in the array, okay? Move on to the third, then what's left, okay? And it gets shorter and shorter. Does that demo kind of see what's happening here? Yes? So notice, right, you never check inversions with the left-hand side of you, right? Numbers you've already visited that's on the left-hand side are I'm already done visiting in the I loop. I don't need to visit yet again. It's everything in front of me that I must make said comparison with. So this for loop must match that, okay? So if I start at 0, my next comparison better start at 1, okay? So I can eliminate these first 2 things, okay? And then one of these 2 is favorable, okay? Because if I'm thinking at the very start of my nested loops, I start at 0, and I gotta compare that with elements at index 1. Does that make sense? Yeah? And it keeps marching forward. I like the +1s, okay? Everything needs to be visited. And so we're left with, okay, when do I stop? The final question is here, okay? Do I stop just before length, or do I stop one before my length? So fast forward, okay? You're at the last pair, like here, okay? I is the index of 3, okay? And then J needs to be able to visit and start at 2, okay? I can't go one more though. So that inner loop, when I get down to here, needs to stop, okay? X.length -1, so this is 4, right? It stops at 3, 0, 1, 2, and then I loop will stop there. But the J loop needs to visit I +1 and then can't go anymore, okay? So that is 0, 1, 2, 3. I stop just before my length. So I hope I don't get it wrong. I think it's the third one. Is that right? Okay, good. All right. Does that explanation make any sense, though? Kind of? I feel like sometimes I'm just talking with a bunch of words and I lose my audience. Gage, question.
Wait, is x dot length, is that isn't the last element of every array dot length? So isn't that
No, because notice it's strictly less than, right? So if you stop 1 before your length, that is the position x dot length minus 1. Good clarifying question, though, because I could have made it 2 answers, right, by introducing an equal sign here, right? And then the 2 would have been equivalent, yes?
Yeah.
There's that classic off by 1 kind of concept coming into play. Make sense? And so a tip with these questions, right, you notice, right, we call them edge cases when programming. The beginning and the end, the in-between you don't really care about, right? That's the +1 part. And that's likely where the differences will occur, right? When do you start, when do you stop? The edge. Okay, 13, yeah, this is the hard one, okay? So what is the output of this program? We'll talk about all of these at once, and this question relates to a bunch of others, okay? Now, what's confusing here is I haven't gone over one of these keywords, and that specifically is super, okay? Super comes up in asteroids more so in part 2. It can come up in part 1. Super is referring to your parent. So in this case, when I see the word super, I got to think base class, okay? And that's specifically for the get big num thing. And then down here, notice super, right? That's calling my parent's constructor. Without knowing that part, I think you just have to use your best guess, but I don't blame you for getting this one wrong, because I haven't explained this one in detail. It's more of an asteroids part 2 thing. Super shouldn't be a part of your quiz on Friday. I'll make sure of that. But everything else related to inheritance will be. Super will be on the final. Okay, so let us begin. So base starts off as 3. Notice in the base class, I have 1 constructor, okay? 1 constructor here, and it takes in an argument a, and a gets stored into my num. So base class holds the value 3 as my num. So I'm just going to say base class is 3. Derived does something similar. It calls its own constructor. Derived class then calls super of 2. So what this does is super of 2 calls the base class constructor and passes in the argument 2. From this line, okay, derived classes my num has been initialized to be 2. Does that make sense? Okay, because I didn't, my constructor, the key idea I think concept-wise is your parent must exist in order for you to exist, right? That's kind of this part. I must call super to initialize my num, that variable. Derived class has the value 2. Base gets incremented twice, so base's my num is now 5. Derived is getting incremented once, so what was once 2 now becomes 3. Okay, derived has the value 3, and then we'll begin these functions. Notice increment does exist because that's inherited. Okay, I believe that idea is clear at this point as you practice in asteroids part 1. The first line, base.getBigNum, get big num is down here. Is that a star or yeah? So this one is multiplying the number by itself. So that's 20. It's 5 times 5 is 25. Can I eliminate many things? Oh, good. Okay, I can stop then, right? There's only one thing with 25. Thank goodness. But for the sake of the other questions, which is worthy of review, let's step through what happens in the later system.out.println lines. Yes, Ben. Right. So good question. As written, if derived class was empty, there would be an invisible call to super. Okay. There would be an invisible call to the default no argument constructor. Now, in Java, because I didn't write one in this specific example, notice there is no public base class parentheses parentheses, right? That's the default no argument constructor, okay? It would complain and say that there is the implicit call to parent constructor or super constructor or something. You would get an error in Java, okay? And so that's kind of the bad part about how this question is currently written. If you do the practice in Unit 9 in the progress check, you'll see it. The default no argument constructor pop up. Okay, you'll see questions related to that idea. Okay, so we finished the first line. We understand why the first number is 25. Yes. Okay. Then derived.getBigNum. Okay. So then my eyes go down here. Derived.getBigNum super.getNum. Okay. So this one I return my parent's value of get num. Strange. Why did I need to do this? I feel like there's a trick here. All right, let's move forward. I know the output should be 9. So get num would then return my derived's value, which was 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay. I'm thinking get num should have worked by itself. You didn't need super out here. Yeah, I don't know why I put that there. Maybe just to practice the 2 versions of super. Okay. So then the third line, base dot get small num. Okay, get small num is dividing it by 2. 5 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, it's not 2.5. Why is that? Because this is integer division. My num is an integer. 2 as written right now is an integer. So 2.5 in integer form is 2. Yes, there comes integer division. Lastly, derived got get small num, okay, is inherited. So I divide 3 by 2. By similar logic, the last output is 1. Does that make sense? Okay. And so by walking through all those lines, is this one different? No, this one's exactly the same. All right, so we talked about this question. This one's a little different. Do you see that? Yes? You see that image? So this one, notice we had this constructor right here. It's very minor, okay? This is the no argument constructor, okay? And so functionally, this program, notice, because it's kind of like related to Ben's question, right? Notice here, derived class is empty, okay? It's like the MySafe example from the slides. Your parent must exist in order for you to exist. So although the derived class constructor is empty, it's going to first create a base class. And then, so that's why here, right, in this example, derived class starts off as 2, okay? Why is that? Well, you say that the constructor is empty. It's like, no, it's going to create a base class, and the base class's no argument constructor is 2. There is an invisible call to super in this example, yeah? There is an invisible call to the default no argument constructor, yeah? And that's why the second line is derived, so then that's why it is 2, it becomes 3. I get big num, which is 3 times 3, which is 9, okay? All right. And in this code is similar to the other one. I believe the outputs are the same. And we talked about the fourth line. Okay, that was a jam-packed Quizizz. I need to get a cup of tea. Let me stop this video now, okay? So this will be posted for your